So I wanted to throw this in a dedicated video for those of you that want to avoid Switch 2 content because you're sick of it. But obviously, if you're listening to this, you're not avoiding it. So hi, we got the best look yet at what the Switch 2 is going to be if you believe in all these leaks. So this week, I feel like it's been just bananas the last 7 days of accessory makers leaking stuff out. We have some Alibaba accessory leaks. We have some 3D models being sent to certain channels. We have Satisfied Grip posting a video like hiding supposedly the Switch 2 and then deleting the video. Were they actually hiding something or not? And honestly, this one to me is the best yet. And that's why I wanted to make a video discussing it specifically. I'm going to let these images ride up here for a while so we can go over them together. But if this is the Switch 2, I gotta say, I'm of two minds. I'm of really split two minds. But let me know in the comments down below what you think of this, all right? So this is some silicone case for the Switch 2, but what's most interesting here is that it's actually on a mock system. I don't think they actually have a Switch 2, but it's very much on probably like the same 3D printout that we've seen and that has been sent to certain people as a way to kind of really mock this and make it seem as legit as possible. So we'll talk about the first image here, and let's go over the new things that are interesting. What's interesting here is the screen is much larger. If you've seen any of the comparison shots, the Switch 2 screen is much larger than any Switch 1 screen, but something I'll point out, and this is going to be like, I think kind of the whole video, like back and forth. It's like one thing, ooh, one thing, And the ooh is the screen is a lot bigger, but the is the bezel is also big. Now the OLED was really great and is really great because it brightened the colors. It refined the system a bit. It removed much of the bezel. A bigger screen is awesome, but I don't really know why we've got to add bezel back. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer in any way here. I just think that if this system is going to cost, 1.5 times the Switch, that it should be a really premium system. And again, like the little detail here or the, grain of salt is like, this could all be fake. This could just be people replicating what they're seeing from other people, right? Like maybe this silicone case developer doesn't actually know the Switch 2. They just know what the other case developer knows about the Switch 2. Do you know what I'm saying? Like this could easily be a case. I think we just have to pause right here to say this could easily be a case where everyone is just believing everyone else, and therefore the originator of the 3D model of the Switch 2 is the Switch 2 generator, right? Like they're what everyone's basing it on, not actually what it is. And I mean, it does, we're seeing a lot of things that are supposedly very rumored about the system, right? The Joy-Con that don't have the slide rails, but some magnetic click-on, the U-shaped kickstand, this C button, the weird pedals on the back of the triggers. So it probably is true. It probably is lining up. This probably is what the Switch 2 is going to look like. I don't expect it to be some grand departure from the Switch 1, but it is funny that there's a world where like the person that just 3D printed something they thought would look kind of like a Switch 2 is actually responsible for all of these subsequent posts. But alas, that C button, let's go there. Nobody really knows what this C button is for, all right? So there's the home button and there's the capture button. So C can't be capture. That would be like the most likely thing. I think capture buttons maybe are kind of, maybe they could do without them, but alas, Nintendo seems to be keeping it here. The C button, is it a cast button? Is it some sort of TV button that's going to allow you to take something from the TV and put it on the Switch or cast it from the Switch up to the TV? Like, say you don't have your TV and Switch docked, but the dock is plugged in. Can you cast what's on your Switch to the dock and then play it on the TV via some sort of local streaming? Otherwise, what is a C button for? Think of other words that start with C. None of them really seem video game apt to me, like console, controller, configuration, calibration. Like, I don't really see that. There's nothing really with 3D or VR. Camera? Is it a camera? Is there a pass-through camera that this is going to allow you to see? Would they need to put a camera in? Are there going to be games that can utilize some sort of AR or whatnot? Does C open up the camera lens and then it configures the screen to be a pass-through, like a MetaQuest or something like that, where, you can press a button and all of a sudden you're seeing into the real world. Now you're seeing through the Switch. To me, it's either cast or camera. But if you believe that this is actually the Switch, there ain't no camera on the back of that. So then it's got to be cast to me. And I don't know specifically what that would be used for or how that would be beneficial, but cast. Like at that point, it has to be some sort of Wii U gamepad style system where it's utilizing two screens, or it's just a local live streaming thing, in which case, like, okay, you don't want to get up and put your Switch in the dock? Like, is that really worth a full dedicated button? Like, you don't want to put your Switch in the dock? Is that really worth it? I don't know that there's a world that you can cast without a dock. I'm not sure. So we'll leave it at that. If you have any other C words for me, if you can Sesame Street educate me on what else starts with C that involves video games, I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. The rest of the front of the Switch looks pretty darn standard. No D-pad, 4 arrow buttons, 4 ABXY buttons, a plus, a minus for a start and select, 2 joystick, and, the Joy-Con are taller. The buttons look to be bigger. Hopefully the joysticks are bigger and more pronounced and provide for a better experience for FPS type games. But let's move to the pedals on the back. All right, the back of the system is very interesting because as you can see, that extra whatever it is, we're going to call it a pedal, is not the ZL or the ZR or the L or the R. They still have a ZL, ZR, L and R, and then there's this third button that we can't see a label for. Now, I think this is another good indication that these companies don't actually have the Switch and don't actually know exactly what it's doing and what it's capable of. Otherwise, you'd probably see more labeling. Now, the other theory is that this is a button that you can configure how you wish. Would Nintendo put a customizable button on their controller? Does that seem like something Nintendo would do? In my opinion, no. I'd lean more towards this being a dedicated button for something, but I can't quite figure out what. It does not look to me like the scroll wheel that we've heard rumored in the past as a way to like navigate menus quicker. So I don't know what this third button would be. And if you think about where it would be, it's in a bit of an awkward position. So I don't really foresee you being able to press the trigger and this button at the same time. Therefore, to me, it seems like it could be a customizable button, like in the same way that the back of like Xbox Elite controllers have an extra like paddle for you to customize in some way. Is that what they're going for here? Or do they need an extra button? Is it something to do with the camera or casting? We don't know. What's also interesting to note is that these Joy-Con, when detached, will have this button as well. So is it a world where they're trying to extend the functionality of the Joy-Con in its multiplayer horizontal mode and not really factoring in so much to the handheld play? I don't know. A Pro controller is my preferred way to play. I'm probably not playing the Joy-Con. Personally, I don't really care if the Joy-Con have an extra button, don't have an extra button. It's used for solo, it's used for multiplayer. The only way I would really care about this is if it has some significant user advantage. Is it customizable, or is it something that is specific to the Switch 2 interface? But based on what we've heard rumor-wise, the Switch 2 UI is going to be the same basically as the Switch 1. I don't know what a dedicated button for interface could even possibly be. But it's very interesting looking, and I'm curious to see how they frame this, because it's going to be one of the selling points. If you look at this just like eyes-only perspective, forget about the hardware, forget about the software, you've basically got a C button, you've got a U-shaped kickstand, and you've got these extra pedals on the back. That's what you've got. You've got a bigger screen too, of course, and taller Joy-Con, and you've got hopefully no drift, and you've got this magnetic system that you can see here. No rails, clicking on, snatching on, attaching on magnetically. Maybe they incorporate this into the logo. Maybe they incorporate this into the sound effect, the branding in some way. I think that's highly likely. But if we're looking at the system as a whole, it could pretty easily be confused as a Switch. Or, forgive me for saying this, but a knockoff Switch. Like, you know how you can go on Temu and get like kind of like a knockoff console, or they sell them like on Alibaba, we mentioned earlier. It's just like a knockoff, right? It's like, oh, it plays 100 games and it looks like the Switch, but it's not actually a Switch. Kind of the vibe I get from this, especially with it being bigger, because I feel like those things are usually bigger to try and entice you. Nonetheless, this will be nice, I'm sure. Don't worry. The U kickstand in the back, interesting. I've seen some people describe it as a GameCube style handle, but I don't think that's what it's going to be used for. This will be a bigger, probably heavier system than the Switch, but I still don't think they intend for you to carry this around like it's some sort of briefcase. I just think that's asking for trouble. I know Nintendo makes very durable systems, but I can't imagine this U-shaped kickstand being so durable that it's used to carry the system around. Now, maybe they think this is an ergonomic solution to avoid fingerprints on the screen, or I don't know, dropping the Switch in some way, but there's no world in which I am transporting my Switch via this as a handle. Therefore, I think it's just a better kickstand. I think it's a more supportive kickstand. The kickstand was, different and slightly improved on the OLED, but I don't think it's ever been a great kickstand. And with it being an even bigger screen, maybe there is more appeal for this tabletop mode play, and maybe it is something that Nintendo wants to emphasize, given that like a Steam Deck doesn't really have a stand. Although, again, for me, the usage cases of tabletop mode outside of the novelty of it at the very beginning are few and far between. I think the most important things about the Switch are going to be internally and software-wise, and anything they do on the front is, to me, a way to, yes, maybe slightly improve the system, but mostly distinguish and differentiate and give some back-of-the-box talking points that they can mention as why this is different and why this is worth more money, especially because this is Nintendo. And typically, Nintendo does not go the iterative route. I mean, they do. They make iterations when it comes to within each generation, but from generation to generation, they don't typically iterate. They typically go big, bold, different, gimmicky, weird. And the Switch 2 is going to be one of the first times, probably since the Super Nintendo, that they actually just said, hey, we're making a better version of what we had last gen. And therefore, I think Nintendo probably feels a little self-conscious about it. And I think they're really, really interested in making sure that from a bird's eye perspective, physically, the system is different. And I wouldn't be surprised if these buttons and these additions, the C button, the pedals, are more gimmicky and useless than actually important and functional. And maybe I'll be completely wrong. I'd be glad to be wrong. I'd love if these were actually super important, awesome buttons that contributed to the gameplay experience and the user experience in a significant way. But my gut tells me that these are being put on here as a way to distinguish and differentiate the system, and that they won't actually factor in much to the gameplay. I'll be interested to see if a Pro Controller leak comes out, if they're going to make a new Pro Controller. And that's going to be sort of the telltale sign, right? Does the new Pro Controller have these additional pedals, whatever you want to call them on it, or does the Pro Controller not? Then you'll know for sure, oh, this is just an extra little like gimmicky doodad for the Joy-Con when they're in multiplayer, or a camera or something, versus it being a critical feature. And you also have to remember that Nintendo is looking to incorporate many more third-party games this time around, given a superior hardware system versus the Switch 1. And they don't want to make it like the Wii U, where everybody has to bend their nose, fingers, and toes Nintendo's way to get their game to work. So any sort of like exclusive features, exclusive buttons, exclusive ways of interaction, I think are very unlikely. Again, that's why to me the C button must be cast to your TV like a local stream, not cast to your TV like split your controller or utilize the Switch as a special secondary screen, because that's going to make it very hard for third parties to come on board, and I don't think Nintendo will do that after how bad the Wii U performed and how much it bit them in the butt to have such a unique and in some ways cool, but at the same time difficult thing for developers to cope with when trying to port their games over to the Wii U. So this is our best look yet at the Switch 2. If this is the Switch 2, okay, I'm fine with it. At the end of the day, we knew the Switch 2 was going to be a better Switch 1, but as I mentioned at the top, I'm a bit torn on it. I think that this Switch 2 looks fine. I also think this Switch 2 doesn't look exciting. And maybe it doesn't need to be exciting. Maybe the games and the hardware power is what should be exciting about it, and most likely that will be the case. How do you make a flat handheld exciting when we've gotten a bunch of them this generation, from the Steam Deck to the ROG Ally to the Legion Go to the Switch and its many iterations itself? I don't know. I don't have a great answer. That's why I'm not saying it looks bad. I just, given Nintendo, given what they've done in the past, a significant upgrade or a significant change would be pretty fun. And maybe the Joy-Con magnetism will end up being that significant upgrade, and we just can't know it until we actually use it yet. Heck, no drift is, by all accounts, a very significant upgrade. So that's why I say I'm both ways on this. Like, I'm totally fine with this being the Switch 2. I'm not blown away with this being the Switch 2. And I'm very curious to see if any of these buttons are actually useful, or if they're just tossed on there as a way to make sure that people know this is the Switch 2. It's the one with the big letter C on it. C is for cookie. C is for comment down below. C is for I really can't figure out what they put this on here for. But let me know your take in the comments down below, everybody. I think we're going to find out that this is really spot on really soon. If I had to put my marbles in the yes or no basket, I'd say, yeah, this is the Switch 2. But what's your take? Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay happy, stay positive out there. I love you lots. Until next time, SwitchForce out.